Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Welcome to today's session, Health and Wellness, Mindfulness in the Kitchen. My name is Juliana Valencia. I am a social services specialist with Fairfax Area Agency on Aging. You should have received an email this morning with the presenter's slides, so you'll have them for future reference. Now, before I introduce today's speaker, I will go over a few housekeeping items. There is a Q&A button where you can submit your questions throughout the presentation. Also, today's presentation is being recorded, and a recording is going to be sent out to everyone who registered by early next week. In addition, there will be a brief survey as you signed out. If you could take a moment to answer those questions, it really helps us provide topics that are important to you. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Cynthia Lair. Cynthia has written 3 cookbooks. She has given a TED Talk on how to cut an onion. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend that you do. And she was also the host of the YouTube series Cocos Interruptus. She was on faculty at Bastyr University from 1994 to 2021, where she created and directed Bastyr's Bachelor of Science in Nutrition and Culinary Arts degree program. Now, her latest book, Sourdough on the Rise, How to Confidentially Make Whole Grain Sourdough Breads at Home, was released October 2019. The fully revisited 4th edition of Feeding the Whole Family was released in 2016, and it has sold over 80,000 copies. A cheerful-looking 3rd edition of Feeding the Young Athlete was released in 2016 by the publisher Readers to Eaters, who are committed to food literacy for children. Ms. Lair presented at Dr. Andrew Wells' annual Health and Nutrition Conference in Arizona in 2015 and 2017, and she frequently teaches and lectures in the Seattle area. Cynthia, thank you so much for being here, and welcome.
Thank you. Ooh, I'm gonna.
Your mic is working now.
Okay, good. Yay!
Just let me know when you're ready to share your screen, and I'll make you the presenter.
Okay. Yeah. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is a topic that is really important to me. I don't know how many of you practice meditation or practice yoga, which is a kind of meditation in motion. But the goal of meditation really is to bring that to your daily routine, to your daily life, so that you are operating more moment to moment or in the present, rather than having your mind spin in what happened in the past or what happened in the future. And I think cooking provides this beautiful transitional thing from taking you from whatever busyness you were to the present moment. And I'm going to kind of explain why, and then I'm going to show you how to make a dish and kind of demonstrate some of the things that I talked about. So I have a little wee PowerPoint here, so I'm going to turn that on. Great.
Perfect. I can see your PowerPoint.
Thank you. Yeah. So the first thing to think about is what happens when you enter your workspace. So when you come home from work or come home from errands or picking up children or whatever you're doing, and you have in front of you that you're going to cook a meal or cook a dish or get some food ready, what happens there? Are you kind of mad about it? Are you excited about it? It's good to kind of check in with yourself and see, how am I feeling about preparing food today? And it's perfectly normal to sometimes be kind of irritated by it. But the food can also help you move out of that irritation or move out of that hurriedness. And so we'll talk about some things that can happen. The first thing you want to think about is it easy to work in your kitchen? And I found this photograph of a very, very cluttered kitchen. And I'm not saying that your kitchen's not okay if it looks like that, but it's hard to work in. And so it's really important to have the kitchen be a space where you feel comfortable, you feel relaxed, you feel like I have what I need to do things. For some people, that could have there could be a lot of cheerful pictures on the refrigerator like this, but essentially you want to have a space where you can work. And my kitchen, I know you can't really see it, but it's really pretty small, but I do keep some counter space here and there that's open and kind of ready for work. And one of the things a friend of mine, Marilyn, taught me was to use prime real estate. So the drawers or cabinets or whatever that are easiest to reach, that are quick to reach, those should have your favorite things, the things that you use all the time. So sometimes we organize pots and pans and skillets and everything by type, and but the easier way to do it is to have it by, these are the things that I use all the time, and so I'm going to make sure they're the easiest to reach, whatever that means to you. So kind of sometimes if your kitchen is not an inviting place, you're not going to want to come in and find a happy place for yourself to make food. And it's worth the time maybe to reorganize your kitchen just a little bit so it's just the way you like it. And then it's always nice to have a ritual that tells you and your mind and your body that we're going to prepare food. And of course, the goal is that at least once in a while, that you're like imbuing your food with calmness, with love, because you're going to feed yourself and maybe your family this food. And in order to do that, sometimes it helps to have some sort of ritual, like washing your hands. For me, it's I do wash my hands, but for me, it's putting an apron on. And that signals to me, oh, this is what I'm going to do now. So whatever that means for you, it's nice to have this little cue. Here, this is what we're doing now. This is something that is interesting, and but I taught it all of the time when I was teaching cooking classes, and so therefore I just naturally do it. And that's creating something called Misoplas. And what Misoplas means, it's a French word, is everything in its place. So when we cook, sometimes what happens is we like sort of get a recipe out, and then we're just kind of running all around the kitchen trying to find things, and that's not a very calming experience, as to try to cook and find things and get the right pot all at the same time. So a mise en place means that you have all of the ingredients that you're going to use out and ready, kind of at the ready. And then for me, oftentimes I'll go ahead and measure out the ingredients and maybe put them in small bowls, and I'll show you how I do that. And something about that is really calming. And it seems like it's going to take more time. But in reality, if you kind of have all your ingredients out and ready to go, the dish goes together much, much quicker than if you're going all around looking for things. Where's a teaspoon? This makes you calmer and more relaxed and more able to connect with your food. So the gateway for me for cooking and being in a mindfulness space is to use your senses. And there's nothing more beautiful and wonderful and easy than the senses that come up when you are preparing food. And if you really focus on those senses, you can't help but come into the present moment. So one thing you can do is just look at the food that you're working with, and just look at it, like notice little details about it. So maybe if you are cutting a carrot, maybe you'll notice, well, this carrot seems really moist, or this carrot's kind of dry, or look, the skin is it's a little bit hairy, I might shave that place off. And believe it or not, just doing that, just really looking at the food that you're working in, does a couple of things. One is it brings you right into the moment. And the other thing it does is it evokes some gratitude. I mean, when I look at an egg and I think of all that it had to go through to get to this egg that's in the palm of my hand, that's kind of amazing to me. And those are the gratitude is a beautiful way to call on your mindfulness, to wake it up. Listening is just really important. So sometimes there's a lot of noise in the house, or maybe you've cranked up the rock and roll on your Alexa or something like that, and all that is good. But there's this beautiful kind of symphony that happens when you cook, of hearing the pots and pans, hearing, maybe kids in the next room, just tuning in to what is happening in the moment. One of my favorite ones to listen to is butter sizzling in the pan, because when it's just bubbling or sizzling, it's the right temperature to add the next ingredient. And you can tell by sound if your heat's too high or your heat's too low. And when you've gotten to that place where you're listening that carefully, you are super duper in the present moment, and your food will be better. Touching the food is really important. So many of our foods are packaged, and we don't really interact with them with our sense of touch. But there's always something, even if it's just some nuts that you're adding to something. Just touch them and feel the curve of them, and feel the little bumps and all the things about them. And so that's another good reason why we wash our hands, so we can actually use the sense of touch. And like, I really love holding a knife and feeling the weight of it, and or just touching greens is a really pleasurable thing as well, because they have a crispness to them. And it also informs you, like maybe the greens you're using today are a little wilty, and you're like, that's interesting, maybe not the best for a salad, maybe I should just saute them, right? So that gives you some information. Smelling is really important. I have a wonderful friend named Omid that teaches a class, lots of classes, but he literally will line up spices, and when somebody says, well, how much of this should I put in and how much of that, he'll say, smell it. And he'll smell it, and he'll say to you, how does that, do you want that? Does that smell, is it attractive to you? Does that smell good to you? And they might say yes, and he'll go, well, put in a little more of that then. So a smell is also a great thing in telling when things are maybe not going so well, like you're starting to burn something, which happens to all of us. But also just smelling, like when you're baking, the food in an oven baking actually tells you when it's ready more accurately than the timer, because you're walking around or you're doing whatever, and all of a sudden you get this big whiff of like cookies or roasted potatoes or something, and that's probably exactly when they need to come out of the oven. So I love that. And tasting is so important, and tasting along the way. And of course, your sense of taste is going to bring you right into the present moment. But your sense of taste is also going to inform you of, what does this need? And most dishes, in my experience of teaching cooking, need a little more salt. But sometimes they can be a little bitter, and they need a little more sugar or a little bit of sugar or something like that. Or sometimes they feel the dish is kind of flat and what they could use is a little acid. So we always want to taste it along the way and then make little corrections. And that tasting brings you into the present moment, because now you're like connected to your food. You're not thinking about, some argument you had 2 days ago, or about how the heck are you going to be able to do whatever you need to do tomorrow. You're just there with the food. And yeah, it's good. So those 5 senses are your pathway into mindfulness. And cooking in the present moment, it improves our relationship with our food because it can evoke gratitude. It can improve our cooking skills and make our food taste better because we're taking the time to connect with our senses and then use our senses to connect with our food. And so you're going to make food that tastes better to you, and that's really important. And when the food tastes better, of course, you're going to enjoy eating it a lot more. Are there any questions about the things I just said?
I do have a question for you. You talked a little bit about the connection. In nowadays, it's so easy to disconnect from people, specifically when there's so much technology. And I think that just the way we disconnect from people, we also are very disconnected from food, from what we put in our mouths, for whatever
Yes.
reason that may be. So how can we create this better, a healthier connection with food? If you have any recommendations or any tips.
Well, the first thing I would say is except unless you have a recipe up on on an iPad or something, no screens in the kitchen, if at all possible. I actually take that to such a degree that I will actually print out a recipe on a piece of paper just so I am not staring at another screen. And then making, I know it sounds hard, but making food, or at least one dish for the meal from scratch, meaning that you're putting the ingredients together yourself instead of just heating things up. So let's say I'm tired and I'm just gonna order a pizza or something like that. Then I might I'm going to make a salad. I can do that. I have enough energy to do that. And then there's something that you made, something that you created with your mind in the present moment that's part of the meal, and that can then you reap the benefits from that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, just we have actually a comment from one of your former students who is being very grateful that you are here with us, and she has really fun memories of your teachings. So if you want me, I can read what she wrote.
If you want to, yeah. I'll probably blush off camera, but
she said her book Feeding the Whole Family nourished my babies and taught me so much. So good to see her here on the East Coast. Centering ourselves in the present moment and using cooking as a meditation is such a beautiful thing. So thank you so much, Cynthia.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and move. Well, before I do that, I think I'll move my my laptop around. This is not very, there we go. Okay. I might need to rearrange just a little bit. Okay, hi. So I'm just going to show you, I'm going to put together a dish, a really, really simple dish that I've used for a long, long time. It's a Mediterranean quinoa salad that has some feta and some nuts and some herbs in it. It's a whole meal in itself. You don't have to do much else if you do this, but let me show you my cutting board right now. So you can see I have a little Misoplas going here. All of the ingredients that I need for this dish are here and ready to go. And the quinoa is already cooked. It's a multicolored quinoa, but any kind of quinoa works. And one of the great things about quinoa is it cooks in 15 minutes. And therefore, it's really doable as a dish to put together fairly quickly. Also, quinoa is a grain that has all 8 amino acids, so it's pretty high, higher than most grains in protein. Yeah. So you can see I just put things in these little bowls. It's nothing fancy. Maybe you're thinking, oh gosh, that's more things to clean up, but it's worth it to me for the visual calmness that it gives me. Oh, here's everything I need, and I don't need anything else. I'm in good shape. Yeah. So I don't have a big counter here. I just have this cutting board. So I'm going to move a few things aside. And I always like to, when I'm building a salad of any kind, I like to just start with a bowl. This green bowl I've had for a long time. I don't even know how long. And I have appreciation for this bowl because it's just the right size for me, and I actually really love this lime green color. So I invite you to also have a favorite bowl that you make salad in. And you know, it doesn't have to be expensive. I know this wasn't very expensive, but it's right for me. I like it and I use it. And that's another thing. It's like when you take a favorite bowl out to use, or a favorite pot or whatever, there's like, oh, it's sort of like an old friend, and that's the beginning of coming into the present moment. Then I'm going to start any salad that I make by putting the dressing in the bottom of the bowl. And in this case, it's a 1/4 cup of lemon juice and a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Really, really simple. And there's so many other ingredients in this salad that this dressing doesn't need more. If I was just making it for a lettuce salad, let's say, or something like that, I might put a little mustard and honey in there or something. But this dish doesn't need all that fancy. And what I like to do is build the salad. So there it is in the bottom of the bowl. And I'm not going to toss it yet. That will happen later when I'm ready to just toss everything together. And now I'm going to add this quinoa that's cooked. And I want to tell you that when you're cooking quinoa, if you've never cooked it before, that's great. It's not too hard. But the important thing about cooking the quinoa is to not be in a big hurry and take it right from the stove to become a salad, because it needs to kind of be dry and loose and crumbly like this, because if it's still a little wet, or there's still a little water left in the pan, you won't be happy with your salad because it will be a little bit soggy. Nobody likes a soggy salad. I don't like a soggy salad. But here I am in this moment, and I'm looking at this quinoa, and it's so amazing that quinoa sort of came to the U.S. Because it's really a South American grain. And it's so nutritious and so easy to cook. It's a little bit, it's more expensive than maybe brown rice or one of those. But here I have this opportunity right here, just staring at this quinoa, to just appreciate it. And if you're having trouble with that, but look, I'm seeing like each quinoa, when it opens up, makes this little tail, this tiny, tiny, tiny little tail. And it's those little things that when you're noticing that in the food, it evokes gratefulness, and you are in the moment. So there's that. And then I'm going to add some toasted pine nuts. Now, pine nuts right now are super duper expensive, like crazy. But any nut you like, you can use in this recipe. I'm not sure why pine nuts just went off the charts expensive. I happen to have some pine nuts in my freezer from before the food delivery system sort of broke down, so I just decided to use those. But walnuts, I often will put toasted sunflower seeds in there. And toasting nuts is also something you can just do on your stovetop in a skillet. And sometimes I toast a whole bunch of them and then put some of them in a jar in the freezer or a container in the freezer to use another time. But nuts are one of those things that toasting nuts, that's another like mindfulness exercise, because when they're ready, you're going to smell strongly the nuts. Yeah, it's great. Okay, and then I'm going to put some currants in here. Raisins are okay too. If you don't have either of those, the purpose they serve in this salad is it's a pretty savory salad with some sort of salty ingredients, and they provide just a little touch of sweetness. So let's say I didn't have any raisins, I didn't have any currants, I didn't have any other dried fruit in the house. I might chop up a little bit of apple or pear or something like that, just to add that touch of sweetness to this. And the next thing I'm going to do is chop up some greens. So in the recipe, it calls for parsley and mint. And I had just like a tiniest bit of mint barely peeking up in this little container I have in my backyard that has mint in it. And then that's all I could find. It's just too early in the season for there to be much mint. So typically when I make this salad, I'm going to use whatever green herbs I have around. Doesn't really matter. Like in the summer, I love to use basil and parsley. That's really nice. Or mint, if you've got a lot of mint. And in this particular case, what I had in my refrigerator was I had some baby arugula, and I had a little cilantro, and then I have this tiny sprigs of mint, and that's what I have. And so that's what I'm going to use, you know, just sort of like being in the moment and improvising with what you have. Yeah, there it is. Now, this is one of my favorite things. And before I sort of started using cooking in a mindfulness way, I was irritated by having to chop things up. And then at some point I was like, no, 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 this is your time. This is your minute here to take a breath. And it's really important, I think, to feel your feet on the ground, like, here I am, this is me, and take a deep breath. Ah, yes, I'm here right now. I'm here with you to teach you something or encourage you to teach yourself something. That's what I'm doing. And then take your knife and hold it correctly, which is not like this. Yeah, and this is really not too good, but grab it at the base like that. So you really have a handle on it. And so there, I have a minute here to, just a second to go, wow, look at those greens. They're so pretty. And then I have this chopping I'm going to do. And the thing that really helps me right now to come into the present moment is the smell, because they're immediately, when they're cut, they're giving off some of their gorgeous herby smells, but also the sound.
Cynthia, we have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what if the person doesn't have quinoa? Can they use farro or barley as the grain in their salad?
Yes. I don't think this salad is the best with rice. It's okay, like brown rice, but yeah, I think even rice would work actually, as long as you don't have your grain too wet. Yeah, but farro can work, barley can work, even kasha would work. And yeah, I'm rethinking that. I would probably use like a basmati brown rice or something if I was using rice.
Great. And then the other question that I have is, what if I feel I don't have the intuition to smell when it's ready?
That's just something that you're going to develop. And so the way that I developed like the smell telling me when something was ready was following the recipe, setting the timer, and then using my sense of smell and kind of seeing, was I right? And the more times that I was like, yeah, I was right. I can really smell those onions and they are caramelized by now. Or, yeah, I'm really smelling those cookies. Let me check and see. Ah, look, the timer's going to go off in 5 seconds. This is cool. So it's kind of like a little game you play with yourself to learn. Any other questions?
No, thank you. This is wonderful. I am just learning right now. This is so good.
Okay, so then usually I put the greens just on top of everything, and notice I haven't dealt with the dressing at all. But even just, do you hear how when I'm picking these up with my knife, there's like this scrapey sound going on? Yeah, just those little tiny things like that are like, yep, I'm here, I'm right here. The food wants you to notice it. It really does, and it will give you a better outcome if you have appreciated it. I know that sounds really weird, but it's true. Then I'm going to put some crumbled feta cheese on here. And yeah, you could use, not sure about, you could use cojita, that would work in here. You could, I need to wash my hand off. What else might you use? You could use maybe some shaved Parmesan could work in there. Whatever you like. I really love the feta because in this recipe I'm moving into kind of a Mediterranean combination of ingredients, so that's why I chose that. And now it's like done. And setting up all those ingredients in a bowl and cooking that quinoa took me about 20 minutes yesterday, because I put the quinoa on and watched it come to a boil and then turned it down and let it simmer. And while it was simmering, I squeezed some lemons and I measured out, and I toasted those nuts and measured out and put them in bowls. So that was not too much. And then when I came here today, if I hadn't been talking this whole time, I could have put this together in about 5 minutes. So Yeah, planning ahead helps a little bit, but another trick that can help you relax, breathe, and enjoy cooking the food is thinking about timing. So let's say I'm going to make a soup. I might come into my kitchen, wash my hands, put on an apron, and the first thing I might do is heat a pot, put some oil or butter in the pot, cut an onion, and put the onion in the pot. Because I know that the longer that onion kind of just barely simmers in there and caramelizes, the better the soup is going to be. And so while that onion is doing its thing, and you've said thank you to the onion, thank you, onion, then you can go get all the other ingredients that you need for your soup together, arrange them in some kind of pleasing way for you. And then when you put the soup together, the onion's ready, you've got the maximum flavor out of that onion. Um, that's so thinking about how to time things so you have moments where you can relax and use the time. And some people go, well, how do you become a better cook? And I would say you have to form a new relationship with time, because there's many foods that benefit from having a little more time to release their flavors and or maybe cook a little longer. Yeah. So then I'm just going to bring the dressing up from the bottom and make sure everybody has a little bit on them. And right now, this is I kind of really enjoy this part of making a salad like this, because I can just stand here, nobody's doing anything. All I'm doing is watching these ingredients kind of toss themselves almost together, and looking to see, has everybody got a little dressing on it? And admiring it. Oh, it's so pretty. Look how that feta just brings, that white of the feta just kind of brings it to, it's like the perfect color. And the greens, you can appreciate all the colors that you've put together. And then, of course, I need to taste it just to make sure that the flavor is balanced. And what I'll be looking for is it like lemony enough? Is it salty enough? How's it taste to me? Yeah, I'm tasting it, and I'm saying to myself, I could use just a little pinch of salt. And this isn't something that you can necessarily learn right away either. It's something where you taste it and then you try to identify, what else might this need that would make it better for me, not somebody else, but for me. And I actually do like salty things quite a bit, and that's probably why my sense of taste is telling me, it needs a little more salt. Somebody else might taste it and go, wow, I can barely taste the lemon. I'd like to bump that up a little bit. So you're kind of figuring it out for yourself of what tastes good to you. And that just also takes time to develop that sense of, what do I need to do here right now so this tastes the best it can to me? And it's ready. I don't have to make dinner tonight now because I just did this. And I would serve this probably with a soup, maybe kind of like 2 dishes, a soup and a salad. Or I might, another way I like to serve it is with some hummus and fresh tomatoes. Although this isn't the best time of year for fresh tomatoes, but yeah, like that. So I'm gonna just come back to you and be here for any questions that you might have.
That was that was wonderful and very inspiring. Actually, we do have a few questions from the audience, and one of the things that I think of is sometimes when we are following a recipe, we kind of restrict our creativity. With your recipe, would people want to know if they can add garlic, oregano, or if they have tomatoes, if they can add other things that might be they might want to do? What would you say?
I would say yes to everything, but you want to add them one at a time so that you add something like, say, I'm going to add some oregano to this, and then I'm going to taste it before I add another thing. And you're going to stop adding more things when it tastes just right to you. But not all, don't kitchen sink it, but take that moment, and there you go. There's some mindfulness. Take that moment to taste it before you add the next ingredient. Yeah.
Mhm. Great. So I have a question. There are so many diets right now, and it seems like the diets go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's kind of hard to use a holistic approach to foods when we're following diets. Um, so how can we create better self-care practices to kind of recreate our relationship to food?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that diets, restrictive diets in particular, are created to sell products. There's really not a lot of health benefits to a lot of them. Sometimes they promise a quick weight loss and you will get that, but the statistics show that most people, after they go off of one of these diets, gain the weight back plus some more. So I think just choosing real food to eat rather than fake food is a great place to start. Like, I'm going to choose vegetables, fruits, nuts, whole grains, some animal products, cheese, things that are easily recognizable as real food. And then within that range, I bet everybody here knows if they have a proclivity for more carbohydrates or a proclivity for more protein. And we have an innate sense of that, and you want to honor that. So like a teenage kid that's growing, still building bone and muscle and that, a vegan diet might not be the best thing because there's just not enough protein to help them keep growing. So we don't want to make the choices based on advertising. We want to make the choices based on our common sense, which we is easily lost in all the
Yeah.
hoodie. Every 10 years there's something that's evil and something that's wonderful, and I've seen it the entire time I've been teaching about food and cooking. So when I first started teaching, protein was bad. Just never. You shouldn't have red meat. You shouldn't have any. And then it moved into fat was bad in the 90s. No fat ever, not a drop. Fat makes you fat. That wasn't accurate at all. And then we moved into bashing carbohydrates again. Carbohydrates are really bad. Don't have a one of them. And the truth is that we need all of the food groups. We need fats, protein, and carbohydrates, and vitamins and minerals. And the question really is, what's your source of those? So if your source of carbohydrates is snack foods and sugary candy and stuff like that, yeah, that's better. I don't have to tell you. But if your source of carbohydrates, it's not like don't eat any of those things, but if your main source of carbohydrates are whole grain breads and whole grains and potatoes and sweet potatoes and things recognizable as whole foods from nature, then yeah, they're fine.
That's great. Thank you. So we have a question from someone in the audience, and she says, my mother is in a memory care facility where they do a lot of cooking demonstrations. Do you think the residents could benefit from these techniques even though they are just watching and not actually cooking?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they watching, I think people love cooking shows are just everyone watches some cooking show. People love to watch food going together and then coming out as something else. It's the transformation story. So it's kind of it's delightful to watch. And if you talk about your relationship with gratitude and food, that's a really good thing.
Thank you. I have really enjoyed just watching you cook and explaining new ways of connecting, not just with our foods, but really with the whole environment of the kitchen. I have really never thought about making sure that what I need is readily available to me, specifically with the utensils.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'm probably going to start looking at my kitchen after we finish this session.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things, I don't know that everybody has the luxury of this, but one of the things is this cutting board, it lives just like that on the counter, just out like that. Because if I had to get this heavy thing out of some drawer or cabinet before I cooked, I would just be like, ah. So for me, this is sort of like a palette. I mean, this is like where I'm going to paint a picture, right? It's just there, kind of waiting for when I'm going to need it or use it, and it deserves space.
Absolutely. Thank you. So question from the audience, where can they get the recipe?
Oh, well, it isn't feeding the whole family, but I'm happy to send you a PDF of it and you can share it.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will send it to everyone who attended today. So somebody sent something, and let me see if I can read it. Sometimes it's not very easy to read from this screen. Somebody says, my lifelong tip is to choose nutritional foods from 4 basic groups: protein, fresh vegetables, fruit, and dairy. Have daily structured meals, set moderate portions to fulfill, and I guess a taboo: saturated fats, sugar, pasta, junk food, liquor. And then this person also adds maybe taking walks 2 to 3 times per week. Take the whole family if you can, and that will help, and it will also help you lose weight. Do you have any additions to that or any other suggestions?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that seems to be something that really works for the person that wrote it, and there's a lot of good advice in there. Um, but there's also I'm sort of moderation in everything and no big no's. So sometimes people, when I go out to eat with them, will make some comment like, "There's probably nothing here you'll like." And I'm like, yeah, that's not true. There's gonna always be something here that I find that is gonna be okay. So it's just not living in the world of black and white or absolutes, and just like, yeah, a walk today sounds good. Yeah, I do try to get my steps in, but if I don't, it's not, no one's gonna arrest me.
That's important to know. um, do you have any last tips or any recommendations for self-care? we have a lot of family caregivers who are very busy taking care of their loved ones. And one of the things that end up happening a lot of times is that they neglect caring for themselves. They because they are caring so much for their loved ones that they forget about their own needs. And so do you have any tips about self-care for them?
Well, yes, I guess, but I mean, one of the greatest ways we can take care of ourselves is to nourish our bodies, because if you are poorly nourished or trying to get by eating energy bars or something like that, then you don't have as much to give, because you're not at your best. So carving out time to feed yourself well, so important. Whatever that takes, because it's very difficult to take care of others when you haven't taken care of yourself. And the primary way we take care of ourselves, yes, exercise, certainly drinking water, but is feeding ourselves in a way that gives us health and good energy. So maybe that means, I need to rethink breakfast, for example. So a cup of coffee and a bagel made out of white flour in the car on the way to work is not really taking care of yourself. You deserve more than that. Yeah, so make sure there's some fruit in your house or some yogurt, or we like steel cut oats in the Instapot. It only takes 6 minutes. Yeah, just rethink how you start the day, how you've nourished yourself before you extend yourself out into the world to help others.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. That was very wise. Thank you. So we are almost at the end of the hour, and this is a really nice way to end the week and kind of entering into the weekend. So I'm going to try that recipe, and I'm very excited to see all of the recipes from your books. So thank you so much, Cynthia. If someone wants to learn more about you, do you have a website or somewhere where we can find you?
Yeah, I mean, I keep a Cookus Interruptus Facebook page, and if I find some kind of news item about food, or if I want to share a recipe, or sometimes I just put funny things up there. That's the most visible place. I don't keep a blog anymore. Yeah, because I'd rather do other things.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge, your experience. And to everyone in the audience, thank you so much for making time out of your busy schedule to be with us. We really appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, as you signed out, there will be a brief survey. If you could take a moment to answer those questions, it really helps us provide topics that you are interested in. Also, I just want to let you know that this was our last session for our health and wellness workshops, but we are going to start a new series. It is an intergenerational series workshops, and we invite you to join us then. It will start in June. Our first session will be on Kundalini Yoga. So we'll send you information about that. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Bye.